All right, so we got a couple of requests on how to tie the Albie Bean fly. There's a couple of kind of unique techniques that we use there, using this really thick Solaris resin. A lot of guys, when they're doing epoxy flies, get a little, have subpar results. They try a lot of coats of thinner resins. They try putting a thinner resin over a thicker coat. I've even seen a lot of tutorials online, guys doing surf candy type flies, and the epoxy's kind of all over the place. And I'd quite a struggle figuring this out as well. There's a guy on YouTube, his name's Giovanni, I'm not sure his last name, but he does a lot of flies using one big coat of thick resin, and they came out great. So I started messing around with that, and that's pretty much the basis of this Albie Bean fly, which is kind of a small surf candy style fly that we've caught a ton of albies on this past fall, and a lot of guys have been asking how to get that epoxy body to come out. So start off, it's a really simple fly. I'm using some clear mono thread just because at the end we're going to tie some eyes on, and this mono thread kind of disappears under the epoxy. It's only one material for the fly, and it's just Bill's body braid. For an Albie Bean, usually you start out with a good wingspan of it. You're better off having a little too much than not enough. We'll set that piece aside. That's going to be the body. And then get a foot or so for the tail. And for the tail, we're going to do 8 loops. Kind of just start right in the middle of the hook. Lash it down. The tail usually I make about the length of the hook shaft. Got one loop there. Lash it down. It's another loop. We want 8 strands total, so it's going to be 4 loops. It's another loop. And the 4th loop. Once you get that 4th one lashed down, you can cut this excess off. It's important here to have all these loops on the top of the hook shank, or anything on the sides or on the back. So kind of just hold them all on top, lash them all down, and get right down to the bend, and you can wrap back up on top of it to make sure this is nice and smooth. The one thing with this fly, you don't want anything sticking out. It will, pop through the epoxy and kind of be a pain in the neck to deal with after. And just go to the back. Like I said, we're going to cut all these loops just to about the length of the hook shank. And we're just going to get our finger brush and brush all these out. And that's the tail right there. Go back. A couple wraps underneath just to prop it up. And this fly will never foul this material. All right, and we're going to get our big, long length of body braid that we pulled off a little while ago. You don't want any of these, these strands getting in the way, so I just like to cut it off flush again. Put it right about the middle of the hook shank. Just make sure it's on there pretty good. Bring the hook back up. I like to leave about a hook eye's length behind it. And then we're just going to wrap this. Ideally, the Albie Bean fly, we're going for a football kind of taper for the body. This material is nice because it gives a nice kind of 3D effect underneath the epoxy. Looks a lot like scales in the water. And this pearly silver we have here, it's kind of like a green iridescence to it in the water as well. It looks really nice, and the fish kind of key in on it pretty easily. Just go back and forth. Again, you want the middle to be a little more bulky than the ends. You don't have to wrap too tight on this. The epoxy is going to kind of seal it all in. And you definitely don't want to, you know, wrap the end here where you're pulling the tail down around the sides. So the back I kind of do pretty loose, just to kind of bring it all together, and then you make your way back forward. Like I said, the epoxy will kind of cover all this up and make it a really nice transition. The one thing you definitely want to make sure you have enough of this material on there, because really with these Albie beans, we found them more effective with a nice kind of thick body. I tied some really slim to start off with, and they catch fish, but just really doesn't have the profile that this kind of football thicker shaped one has. And this does work really well. I caught a lot of striped bass on these as well, not just Albies. It really mimics a small bait fish really well. So again, don't go all the way up to the eye every time, because you're gonna want to do a couple wraps at the end. You'll kind of fill in that gap that we have up front a little bit. Like I said, the back, you don't want to pull too tight, because you'll stop pulling the material down off the back of the hook shank. So once you get to the back, you kind of just want to do a little loose and be pulling this way as you're wrapping, and it will sit nice for you. Almost there. Go back and forth one more time. And again, just a nice, smooth, even body to put that epoxy over is what we're striving for with this. You can see how, like, it looks pretty three-dimensional already with nothing on it. To get to the front, back, a couple in front. And this mono thread will disappear in whatever epoxy we have. So that's basically the shape. And that's pretty much the shape of the finished Albie Bean fly as well. You can put eyes on this. I don't usually, but I will, just to show you how we do this with the Albie Bean and the surf candy. Pretty much just take the eye. Use a bodkin to lay it down, get up near the front. This is one fly. Just take your time, make sure that everything's even and exactly how you want it before you move on to the next step, especially once you start the epoxy, because these flies will last a long time. They're pretty much bomb-proof once you have them tied. I just want to get a couple wraps over the eyes. Just go right back up to the front. We'll whip finish this off. And that's pretty much the end of the tying sequence here. I have the best luck with pink over kind of this silvery pearl. And to get the back of the fly pink is pretty easy. It's a Copic marker. We sell these. And really, you don't want to kind of just dab the back, and it will run all the way down. Nice pink nose. I'm just gonna do the same on the back of the tail. It will last for quite a while on the back of the tail, but it might be something if you might have to reapply after fishing the fly a couple times. But the part that's under the epoxy will never wear off, and usually I'll just leave it the back of the tail, let it wear off, because the fish really only seem to care about the back that's under the epoxy. All right, like I said, I used the Solar is Thick. This is one glue when I first started using it. It's so viscous that you're almost like, you know, what is this even good for? This is the one thing I found it's good for. I used to call this kind of the Gloop method. You're really going to gloop on a whole bunch of epoxy all at once, and you're going to sculpt it with your bodkin. It's going to look like way too much, and you're going to kind of think, you know, what's he doing? It's going to be a mess. And I like these bigger bottles of the Solar Is, especially if you're going to do a lot of flies, because they come with kind of this plastic nozzle that I find it kind of makes application of this, you know, this one viscosity of it anyway, really, really easy. So yeah, we kind of just go back and forth over the whole body. Like I said, it's going to look kind of like a mess, but this is where the thickness of this glue really comes into play. Now you won't have your vise horizontal. This is where a true rotary vise, you know, might be more advantage than like this Regal style, but I always tie in a Regal. I love them. They hold the hooks great. So I just set it, you know, horizontal like this. Basically just gonna take your bodkin and you're gonna start manipulating this glue. And you really just wanna spread it back and forth, and top and bottom. Try to even out the best you can. We're only gonna do one coat of glue. It's not gonna be anything on top. So with this style and this thickness of glue, you really have as much time as you want to get this fly perfect before you ever set it with the light. As far as lights go, I have found that the Solaris lights work the best with this kind of glue. I don't know if it's the LED that they have or whatever, but it really penetrates a large amount of glue fast and easily and evenly, which is pretty important with this fly. You'll see once we get to setting it that we're gonna kind of set it quick on the outside, on the whole thing, and then we're gonna cook the underneath after. And the reason we're gonna do that is because if we don't do that, if you just leave the fly in one position and try to set it, it's gonna run and pool. The glue gets incredibly hot once the light hits it, and it will thin it out quite a bit, and it will start pooling, and you'll run down one side and you'll have an uneven fly. But you can see that, you know, this was kind of a mess a couple seconds ago. And just a couple, you know, manipulating with the bodkin, pulling the glue towards the front. Usually like to, you know, pull it right near the hook eye, get as close as I can, kind of go around the whole hook eye. You want to get, you know, really close. Once you get that, then you can kind of take this blob and start heading towards the tail. And I will extend the body a little bit doing this, kind of, you know, working around the tail, kind of get right up underneath that hook bend. Kind of, you know, pull the tail up as you're doing it so it doesn't get stuck in the glue. And you can see you kind of get this jelly bean kind of shape, and that's where the Albie Bean, the name kind of came from. And yeah, just take your time doing this, because like I said, this unless you lose it, you know, this fly is going to last many fish. Will last bluefish, stripers. You know, you can bang it off the motor, the rocks, whatever, and it holds up really well. So make sure it's right before you set it. And this is kind of a time too where you can see if there's any bubbles in this, which I don't see any bubbles in what I'm doing right now, but you can just poke them with the bodkin and you know, they'll pop. But yeah, kind of just even this out, and you can see if you had a thinner glue, you really wouldn't be able to do this. The Gulf Fat Man works pretty well. Gulf is just getting a little bit harder and harder to get, but that works well, as well as this. But this is kind of my favorite, I think, for this technique anyways. This Solaris thick, it seems to be the thickest, and you really need a thick fly. All right, so you can see I'm pretty much there. So that's kind of the shape of the Albie Bean. That's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna take our light, we're gonna turn it on. We're just gonna flash it, top and bottom. So you're just kind of stunning the outside, so it locks the outside. The underneath isn't going to be cooked, but it's going to stop it from pooling. And you know, once we do this a few times, the outside is going to harden up and won't be able to just cook it. It's going to take a little while to cook, and believe me, the better light you have, the better results you're going to get with this. This doesn't need a top coat. Some guys find that some of this resin can be tacky. I'll show you a trick to getting rid of the tack without using any kind of alcohol or anything like that. Basically, what's happening here is all the oils in the glue are kind of getting released and dried, so it feels tacky. But the oils in your hand, if you just kind of stroke it back while you're setting this glue, you'll lose all the tack to the fly. It'll be nice and shiny, and you won't have to deal with any kind of alcohol or anything else. And you'll see once we get to this stage, we'll just kind of hold it there, 30 seconds each side. And you should wind up with a really nice, you know, even epoxy job in one coat. And that's the beauty of this. You know, you kind of make sure you have it perfect, shaping it with the bodkin, you know, rather than trying to do one light coat and then another coat on top of that. And then a lot of times doing that, the glue really starts to run when you set it, and it's really hard to get, you know, an even body. You know, you can do this exact same thing with surf candies. Usually I'll just take some of this faux bucktail, and I'll do a little crystal flash on top of that, and, you know, do the same kind of body, and it makes a really nice surf candy. But it has flies cooked right now, pretty good. And you can see it's a really nice, even epoxy body all the way around. It catches a ton of fish. It's shiny. It's it didn't take that long to tie, and hopefully, if you were having trouble, you know, with the epoxies, this is a nice way to do it. And, you know, play around with it a couple times, but yeah, just gloop a whole bunch of it on. Use the bodkin, get the fly to look exactly how you like, and then set it the way I showed you with the quick flashes at first, and it should come out fine.